Are going to be
Welcome to episode 24 of Activated Adventures,
where the ghost is on the go.
In this episode, we are going to be exploring Jamestown Settlement, going back in time, and you are welcome to join us.
Back to where some of the first European settlers came.
And a lot of school buses.
Yeah.
We are going through a recreated village of the Paiute tribe of Native Americans.
What we have here is a replica of a dance circle.
And this circle was recreated from a contemporary painting done by artist John White.
You're more dressed than the people we saw earlier. You're more like winter, or they were...
No, I'm more inaccurate.
You're more inaccurate, you're more, I want to be warm. Got it.
Yeah, they work outside a bit more, and so they've, like the Powhatan, acclimatized a bit more to the differences in temperature.
I think this hide must have belonged to the great chief Naga.
Let's see what's inside. These would be single family dwellings.
And you better hope your family is friendly.
This would be for storage up top there. And then down here is where you sleep. And there's a fire pit in the middle with a hole in the roof so the smoke can go out. And a family would have about, what he said, 8 to 10 people would be in a hut like these. Now, Grandma and Grandpa, they get their own hut, though. Get all the fur off.
It sheds.
Oh, we got to get it all off. Otherwise, we won't have clothes to wear.
Why don't we just let the birds come in and pick it off?
I don't think the birds are interested in the hair.
Well, we put some worms on it. And, I don't know.
Into the Yahican we go.
Very painstakingly detailed interior.
They also have a museum there which has actual artifacts and all kinds of exhibits. No photos allowed, so we can't share that experience with you. Oh, and they've got baskets hanging from the ceiling too of the Yahican. And grass mats. Now the women would build these, and the men, they're just good for hunting.
I wonder if they keep food in those baskets so the rats can't get to them. Or water.
That would be practical.
I mean, does this take like a year? Could you do this in a day?
It's forever.
Oh, you know what else they did? They would get the brains and boil it with water, and then you soak it once all the fur's off, once all the hair is off, you just then soak it, and that makes it give it a softer, like...
The brain has a very high fat content. That's what it does. It's so
all your fat is in your head.
Yep. And now we finished. There it is. I'm not sure exactly why this was here, but they believe that kids were up there being guards to keep away the birds, shooting arrows, throwing rocks.
Live action scarecrows. Now this is the chief's house. It's a little more elaborate, except they didn't call him the chief. He was the sachem, and women could also be sachems. We are about to go aboard the Susan Constant, a replica of the Susan Constant, which was it was the lead ship bringing everybody to the Jamestown Settlement. Now the Jamestown Settlement originally was just men. 120 men, young men, came over and established the fort, and then a couple of women came along too. One of them was 14, and that's the age they were married off.
A lot of young ones.
All right, let's go aboard.
It's hard to imagine being packed in here like sardines and being exposed to cold and traveling all the way across the ocean.
These guys, all 54 of them, have to be down here together. They don't have jobs on the ship, so really, without permission or invitation, they can't go up top.
You really get a sense of how tight the quarters were when you're on this ship. I mean, you think ship and you think of like what it is now, big, giant. It's not big at all. It really isn't. They're almost like yachts that they sailed over on. And it took them, I think, 144 days to come over. They got stuck at sea for about 6 weeks, waiting for the tides to be right, the wind currents to be right, because you're sailing. This is not power.
And those 54 men had to stay down there with all the animals.
Yep. Now we're about to go aboard the Discovery. This is the only one that was left behind. Both of the others did go back to England, and this one was left behind because it was discovering the rest of the bays and whatnot and exploring.
Now, in most pictures and movies and so on about ships, you see the big steering wheel. But those are a fairly modern development. In the good old days, we had these to steer the ship by.
We, as if you were there.
Well, I'm not that old.
And this is Godspeed. Only one that had guns on it was the first one, Susan Constantine.
Back in the summer of 1602, where Gosnold saw the most codfish, you're still calling that part of the world Cape Cod. So even if Bartholomew Gosnold isn't a familiar name, you've heard about a trip that he made. Big island off of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard. Anybody remember who Martha was?
His daughter.
Exactly right. Not very many people get that. I keep getting Martha Stewart.
We were on another tour.
Thank you. We are now in the replica of the Jamestown Fort, and this would be an example of, as best as we can, recount what they built the fort to look like on the inside. It's surrounded by fence.
And they made the buildings out of these wattle framework, daubed with clay or mud. These are patterned after or use the same technique as houses in Africa at the time.
So, and England. So this is what would have been inside of this here, then covered with the plaster to make the framework.
This was the church, by the way, and they had a law that everybody had to go to church, sometimes two, 3 times a day.
Yes.
If you missed, first time you could miss a day's rations, second time you could be beaten, and the third time you could be killed.
Men would be wearing the armor around because they thought perhaps that they would be attacked by Spanish. So
And
this is what
the ladies would wear some very heavy costumes or clothing with stays, which
the stays are like corsets.
Yes,
They
which-
tighten you in, and then they had the hoop skirts and the hippie part, which was the fashion in England. Not so practical here.
We can show our visitors how bread was baked using a clome or Devon oven. Now today, I'm baking bread in an iron oven. And we're also making pasties. Pasties are Cornish or Cornwall. Finger food at its best, or convenient to miners. From mining ore, you got a certain amount of poison on your fingers. And you keep that from touching the food. They can hold the food by the pasty by the crust. Hey, do you like Hot Pockets? Pretty good, aren't they? Well, this is kind of like a Hot Pocket or pierogi, empanadas.
this was basically 1607 to about 1620.
And we've got dry tobacco hanging from the ceiling that became the crop that sustained them.
And here we have the armory where they stored all the arms, the weapons, the rifles, the swords, the armor, everything.
Every man who came here learned to be a soldier, maybe with the exception of the baker and the chef, the bakers and the chef. It takes about 2 weeks to learn to fire the musket relatively accurately. Set that match in my serpentine and check to make sure it lands right in the middle. When I misfire, that's the most likely reason that I don't have that set in the right place, okay? Present your piece. Give fire.
This tower was built in the 1950s. Originally, Jamestown was begun as sort of like a World's Fair. It was only supposed to be temporary, but millions of people came the very first year it was open, and that's why it's still open today. Anglican.
Anglican.
Get that word.
You had to be able to pronounce it. That was the first requirement.
You had to be able to pronunciate it.